I get to introduce Dr. Jeanette Steets, who is the Director of Data Science for Illumination Works. And she will be introducing our next keynote speaker, who's Major General Genatempo, who will be joining us virtually, so make sure you've got a good view of the screens.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Great to be in this beautiful facility and getting to focus on that enterprise digital dominance. As you know, in today's day and age, data are a great asset, serving a critical need in helping the DoD achieve information dominance over adversaries. But given the ever-growing volume of data and the variety of data, it's really important to ensure information dominance by bringing in cutting-edge tools. So Illumination Works, this is something that we really focus on. We are a digital transformation company, and our mission, service, and innovative solutions really focus in that area. We're a small business that is headquartered here in Dayton, and we support that user-centric digital transformation. For the past 17 years since the company's inception, we've been partnering with the Air Force to bring speed to analytics and help you process data and get to that information dominance. So across our core capabilities, we really are focusing on that data spectrum from data ingestion, data engineering, analytics, data science, visualization, application development. I have the pleasure of leading the data science team, and I think a great strength of that team is the diversity of the personnel. So we come from a variety of STEM backgrounds, and our scientists and engineers love to work collaboratively to solve those interesting challenges that are tossed our way, like predictive analytics, predictive logistics, trying to determine whether a part is a good candidate for additive manufacturing using AI and ML techniques. So with that, I'm going to pass on to the topic for today and the introduction of our afternoon's keynote speaker. So it's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Major General Anthony Genatempo for his talk on modernizing IT infrastructure. Major General Genatempo is the PEO for Command, Control, Communications, Intelligence, and Networks Directorate for Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. In this role, he's responsible for more than 2,700 personnel and acquisition execution of a $17 billion portfolio that spans developing, producing, deploying, sustaining Department of Air Force, aerial networks, enterprise information technology and cyber infrastructure, cybersecurity systems, software development factories and platforms, combat communications, and special programs. Major General Genatempo entered the Air Force in 1991 through the Rutgers ROTC program, and he really is a career acquisition professional and has served in numerous distinct positions in senior leadership positions. Prior to this current role, he served as the commander of Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center and Air Force Program Executive Officer for Strategic Systems at Kirtland. And then prior to that, he was the Air Force Program Executive Officer for Weapons and Director of the Armament Directorate at the Lifecycle Management Center centered at Eglin. And in kind of past positions prior to that, he served as Program Manager for F-22, Deputy Division Chief of Tactical Special Operations Forces and Trainer Aircraft at the Pentagon, Commander of the 640th Aeronautical System Squadron at Wright-Patt, and also at Wright-Patt, the F-22 Program Director. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome him virtually. Let's all give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I think all we have time left for is questions and answers, so I can move immediately to that. But I appreciate that intro, and it's a wonderful opportunity to talk with you. I really am honored that the Wright Innovative Technology Summit has asked me to participate, and I'm especially thankful that you've allowed me to participate in this way. And I'm going to go into, by this way, I mean virtually and through our networks. And by this example, I'm hoping to give you an understanding as to what our portfolio is doing in the realm of information technology, modernization of our infrastructure, but also some of the offensive and defensive roles that we play of that information technology on our cyber network side and our cryptologic side. So, why do we need to modernize Air Force IT? I think a lot of you probably had that experience going right into COVID, when we were all thrown into that crisis situation and we were all told to disperse to our homes, but we needed to remain productive and we needed to get the mission done. And what a lot of you may not know is the absolutely Herculean effort that went on behind the scenes to a lot of us, including myself in my previous job, on being able to connect the United States Air Force and Space Force at scale in a way that we could still communicate with each other, that we could still organize with each other, and that we can still execute mission with each other. So one of the reasons why I love now, in my current role, to participate virtually is to try to expand upon why exactly it is we're taking advantage of information technology, right? So information technology is supposed to be a capability multiplier. It's supposed to be a quality of life enhancer, right? And I imagine some of you are chuckling at that. And it's supposed to be an increaser of our productivity. So I'll give you the example that we're experiencing right now. When I first got the invitation to come out to speak at the WITS conference to you in person, what that would have entailed for me would have been working a full schedule like I usually have all day yesterday, and then making my way to Logan Airport in downtown Boston at rush hour, to then get on a plane to fly to Dayton, Ohio, probably not through a direct flight. So I would have been getting in around 10 or 11 o'clock last night. I would have then had the whole day. Now, I'm an extrovert and I'm a personable person, but I would have had the whole day to spend with you at the conference to accomplish this 1 hour presentation, when I wouldn't have been back at my home station with my entire team accomplishing that day's schedule. And then we would have wrapped up like around 5 o'clock today, and that would have been either a very late ride for me back home again, or I would have stayed over and I would have traveled back and missed half of the day on Thursday, right? So if you just take that amount of time, that if we put some trust in our networks and the capabilities that reside on them, how much time did I get back, not just for myself on a personal level, to spend with my wife and my daughter and the others around me, but how much time did I get back for my team of those 2,700 that were just mentioned, and the ripple effects out from there. So you see our mission. I hope you're able to see our chart up there on who we are. And our mission is to connect warfighters with affordable, secure, and award-winning cyber C3I and network systems. The thing that I'd like to also add to that, right, we always want to tinker with our mission statement. We are the Directorate of Scalability. What does that mean? That means the experience that I just related for myself and what is being achieved by being able to connect with you virtually, I'm responsible for trying to achieve that for the entire Department of the Air Force and Space Force. Okay, that's a very, very large job, and one of the things that I've learned being on this job is that sometimes the capability that has been created for a small subset of user that may work very well in a corner of our enterprise is not the thing that is going to scale very well to 500 or to 700,000 people. So that is what our team is engaged in. And what I'd like to do is I give, the opportunity I have here today is to kind of walk you through some of those major efforts that are ongoing right now that we, as the acquisition arm for the larger Air Force IT enterprise, and it is a very large enterprise. By that I mean there are 7 other 2-letter organizations that are just as much a stakeholder and decision maker in the process of bringing IT capabilities to the Air Force as we are. And I want to give you a little bit of a roadmap as to what that's looking like, both in the near term and the long term. Now, this conference, I know and understand, I know the people that are putting it on. I know the people that you've had talking with you there. And we're discussing a lot about digital material management. And I'm sure General Richardson went over that a lot with you this morning. What I want to give you is a slightly larger perspective of IT. So for me, information technology really falls into three buckets, not just one, that you are probably most familiar with, and that's the developmental bucket. By developmental, I mean, think of all of your program executive officers and all of the capabilities that they are working on that have some aspect of software or information technology associated with it, and the needs that come with that, right? The structure that needs to come with that. Well, I consider that to be the developmental bucket, right? That's only 1/3 of the Air Force's need from information technology. I also have the operational side. I have all of our COCOMs with Air Force assets involved that are running operational missions with an information technology need. More often than not, think of that as the applications riding on either a cloud network or other on-premise network, but those are operational needs that also flow through our office for providing the infrastructure that they ride upon. The third bucket, or basically falls under my good friends down in Alabama with business systems, right? So think of all of our financial systems, think of all of our manpower systems, and what would happen if those systems suffered or were not accessible due to a lack of infrastructure or even an attack on that infrastructure, right? So now I hope you can see the breadth of what, when we talk about modernizing our information technology infrastructure, how large a scope that actually is. So what I like to do is just give you a really quick rundown of the four divisions in our directorate. And I've laid them out in a quad chart, but actually that should be a Venn diagram. There are a lot of overlapping needs and capabilities and responsibilities that they all flow into each other. So I'll start off first on the upper left with our aerial networks division. And, can't see them? Oh, okay, we can't see the chart. Okay, then I'll start off with the visual. We have four divisions. The first one is our aerial networks division. And that one, we think about that as being the forward edge of command and control, the forward edge of communications, the forward edge of data transfer. And that involves a number of different tactical data links that we have the responsibility for, both the governance of the data links as well as the hardware that is utilized by the platforms that process them and form the network leading back to command and control points. We are the forward edge for foreign military sales of those networks, so bringing in various mission partners into those networks. And this is a very key aspect of our good friend, Brigadier General Luke Cropsey, in a very similar named portfolio, the C3 Battle Management portfolio. And I'm going to get into a little bit more as to what our relationship is with General Cropsey and how I feel we are a very large enabler for what he has been tasked to achieve by our Secretary. The second division that I have is the Air Force Enterprise Configuration Management Office, where we do IT for the Air Force and Space Force at large. That includes our enterprise IT as a service. That includes gateway functions at our bases. That includes our cloud enterprise for the Air Force called Cloud One. All of those solutions are meant to make your user experience at your place of connectivity, whether that's a base or even at home, absolutely the best experience and the most capable experience that it can be, as well as the most resilient and secure experience it can be. Speaking of resilient and secure, that leads me to my crypto and cyber division, which is located down in San Antonio, Texas, right next to our 16th Air Force, which is the headquarters for Air Force Cyber Command. That team there not only has a cryptologic function, so all of our crypto devices in all of our platforms that are helping to ensure our data is secure. They are the depot for all of those devices, as well as rolling out the new modernization techniques, especially to get after our quantum threat that is looming in the near future. The other side of the house works with our offensive and defensive cyber operations, which are utilizing all of the networks and putting tools on those networks and on the platforms that we have in order to induce effects for our cyber warriors. So you may have heard of our Platform One DevSecOps capability. We have our unified platform capability, which is a common platform for not only Air Force Cyber Command, but U.S. Cyber Command. And we have a number of different software factories, much like the rest of AFMC does. You've probably heard a lot about software factories. We are also players in that as well, and bringing everything that we can to a cloud environment, which is the next iteration of computing in our applications and where they're going to reside and at different levels, and I'll get into a little bit more there. And then finally, we have our Special Projects Division, which is doing a lot of the work that, or a lot of similar work that our Enterprise IT Division does, but it's doing that on the SAP side. And they also have a couple of other programs, but we're working very closely with the larger SAP community, the Air Force having the largest SAP community in the Department of Defense. And we're trying to bring those networks, consolidate. I think the last I heard was close to 1,900 different SAP networks that we have in the Air Force, consolidating them, bringing them to a cloud, a secure cloud infrastructure, and moving that entire enterprise into the future. And we really are at the cusp and on an inflection point of just starting our production efforts right now, and then testing that out with some beta users. And then we're going to start looking to migrate more and more customers onto this service as we prove that out, and quite honestly, as we get a better buying model with more buying power to leverage with our cloud service providers. Right there, the scalability aspect of it is what we're driving after. We're not looking at small instances of cloud usage. We're looking at service level wide instances of cloud usage. Okay, so what are we doing in that regard? Some of the efforts that we have ongoing. Right now, our CIO's office, which is SAF-CN, under the direction of Ms. Venus Goodwine, who has just been named our new CIO, has a number of different roadmaps that her Chief Technology Officer, Mr. Jay Bonsi, has worked very hard with his team in putting together. And I believe that that's one of the most comprehensive roadmaps that I've seen in any business area. And when they were first unveiled, we had a presentation back in February out in Denver, Colorado at the Rocky Mountain Cyber Symposium. And I noticed about 4,000 industry partners basically getting carpal tunnel, writing down where they felt that their companies fit into this roadmap, and already the wheels were turning as to what capabilities they had to offer to go after a number of different mission areas. There are over 80 different areas of need that have been identified in this roadmap. And it truly is something that, as we apply resources, we start picking them off one at a time to build out this entire fan of capability. And we have a threshold of what zero trust is going to look like for the United States Air Force. And then we have other capabilities to get after to advance that even further. So Zero Trust, we are the directorate that will be implementing the technologies that that the Air Force is going to bring to bear to institute zero trust across our networks. One of the biggest areas in that regard is an effort called ICAM, that stands for Identity, Credentials, and Access Management. Right? We're shifting away from a network protection to a data protection. Right? The highway, it doesn't matter so much to me who's going to be on the highway anymore as it is to whom, knowing who you are and what access to what data you have. Right? And that is the way that the Air Force and Space Force are moving, and those roadmaps spell out the steps that we'll be taking. The operational imperatives. I won't go through all of them for you if you haven't heard about them by now. There's a lot of information out there on them. What I can tell you is our directorate and these systems and these capabilities are very much intrinsically embedded in almost all of the operational imperatives. Specifically Operational Imperative 7, where the first season of OI7 and the first budgeting season of OI7 really focused on the cyber aspects and the protection aspects of our network. So as the 24 budget rolls out, we'll be applying whatever those resources are to censoring our networks and giving the 16th Air Force a much better snapshot as to the health of our networks at any given time. So that'll be a monumental step forward from where we are today. And it's absolutely a necessity for where we are today, because you have to think of information technology is part of the Cold War of the present and of the future, right? There are attacks, there are probes, there are insertions going on every day to a very large extent across our networks, and it's our warriors in the 16th Air Force and U.S. Cyber Command that are monitoring those, thwarting those, and making sure that our operators and their capabilities are still up and running for them to do the jobs they need to do. So, like I said, we prioritized cybersecurity in the beginning of the OIs moving forward, but we also have a lot of infrastructure modernization, hardware modernization, and that comes as part of our Next Gen Gateway program, which is basically going out to the bases and setting up those firewalls and that boundary. There's a lot of outdated, diminishing resources, end-of-life equipment at a large number of our bases that this effort is meant to address to make that more secure and more resilient. We also have the base infrastructure modernization effort going on, which is introducing the as-a-service model for IT. Right now, we count a lot on our base comm squadrons to do a lot of the base infrastructure concerning information technology. That's running the network, that's running the connectivity to outside of the base boundary. And what we're trying to do with an as-a-service model is free up that responsibility from our base comm squadrons so they can be further utilized in an agile comm employment scenario that is being developed by our A6 community, right? What those warriors are going to be doing out on the forward edge, I will be able to free up time for them by bringing some base services, not all of them, but some base services to each individual base with a contractor in mind, both from small business to large across the Air Force. And we're looking forward to kicking off that effort starting right now, but we'll getting ramped up in FY24, and we'll be starting off with about 17 key initial bases, bringing that infrastructure and those upgrades from wired, wireless, 5G, Wi-Fi, and any combination of those that best fits that individual base's needs based on their mission. So that's a very large effort that we're going to have going on that is kicked off. We awarded the contract earlier this year. We've had multiple meetings with a number of the different bases and our MAGCOMs that own them about the needs, and we're putting the finalization on those plans together, and we'll start moving forward with those upgrades very shortly, actually. Okay, some of the other things to talk about. I mentioned a little bit about cloud, and Air Force, we are the home of Cloud One right now, which is in essence a cloud service for you as either a developer or as an operational user or even as a business system to come and utilize the tools and services that reside inside this securely bounded cloud platform. Now, right now we have about 118 applications that are live today across the Air Force and some on Space Force already. Right now, we have about 153 in the pipeline that are actively migrating. And what I mean by that is funding and resources have been provided to not only make this migration, but then to continue operation in a cloud instance versus what they were previously doing. And then we have about 114 more applications beyond that that have started the initial process with us, which is in essence a phone call to get you into the funnel, and we can handle every type of user from I don't know how to spell IT and my boss said I need cloud to someone that has an entire DevSecOps pipeline set up and all they're looking for is a place for data storage or transport, and they're looking for the best deal that they can in a secure environment, which is what we have to offer. So what I would invite everyone to do is, and I think we can absolutely provide this information. I apologize, I had it on the chart that we'll make sure we share with you later. Is that if you have any of these kinds of needs and you're moving forward and going, I believe there is a cloud instance that will work for the effort that you are responsible for, I would encourage you to engage us right up front, and we can help you figure out not only a cloud service provider, but what level of service that you and your team are ready to utilize. Again, we're not prescribing anything. We're not pushing one over another. What we're trying to do is get all cloud service providers, and right now we have Oracle, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon as part of Cloud One, offering their instances and their services. So if you're more familiar with one than the other, then we can set you up within Cloud One. If you're looking for a software factory or software development tools, and I know you've talked a lot about those as well, I would encourage you to get in touch with us as well to look at our Platform One capabilities and understand what we have to offer there that is built upon numerous users prior to you, and our containerized Kubernetes Iron Bank is what we call that, and to be able to just capitalize on work that has come before you. The biggest thing that I can offer that Cloud One and Platform One provide is in the realm of authorities to operate, ATOs. What we are able to do is bring you under the umbrella of the continuous ATO that has been established by Cloud One. That means we have relieved you of the majority of that effort within your individual programs to go through that paperwork, to work with your approving official, and to then have to continuously do that. Right? Once you are part of inside the bounds of Cloud One, that comes with the package. And to me, as a program executive officer, that results in a lot of intangible savings, right? We don't often have a line item in our program offices as to how much we spend or how much time is spent on that effort. But this is a way that you can capitalize on the enterprise solution that is being put in place. So I talked a little bit about Cloud One and Platform One. I guess the last thing that I'd like to bring to you is the sense of urgency that I have now seen being applied to the information technology infrastructure enterprise by the Air Force and by our senior leaders. Secretary Kendall, even as late as last week at the Air Force Association conference, said we must be ready for a kind of war we have no modern experience with. And what that means, what I took that to mean, is that we're talking about an information war and we're talking about a cyber war that are very much going to be aspects of any type of conflict from the beginning to end. This particular warfighting domain, the cyber domain, is going to be active prior to any official kickoff of anything, however you want to define it, through the initial stages and even up until a cessation of whatever, right? I don't want to brand whatever a future potential conflict may look like. I just want to leave you the impression with the cyber domain is going to be active through the entirety of that, right? So our adversaries that are out there right now are intensifying their efforts in this domain. And as I said, giving our cyber warriors every edge that we possibly can is going to reside on a foundation of a very robust and resilient and secure infrastructure. And that is what our entire team is geared towards, working for the CIO's vision, working with Air Combat Command as our lead command on enterprise IT as a service, and a number of other avenues, like 16th Air Force with our cyber and our crypto, as well as working with Air Force Material Command on our SAP IT, IT enterprise as a service, as they are the lead command for that effort ongoing. So I hope that has given you a little bit of an idea as to what we have going on. I'll talk a little bit to you now about how we fit into General Cropsey. Again, I think everything that we have in our portfolio is going to fit into his tasking to develop an Air Force battle network that will enable command and control to close long-range kill chains. Okay, that's a lot involved in one sentence, but what I talked about initially was, again, our aerial networks division is going to be working on the aspects of the battle network that are at the forward edge. Our enterprise IT as a service is going to be bringing that information from the forward edge back to command and control points, whether through whatever medium we can, either by ground, through air, or through space. Our crypto and cyber divisions are going to be providing the protection for those multiple redundant and resilient pathways, right? And then our special projects team is going to be providing that type of protection and that type of service for our most protected information, our SAP networks that have our truly amazing war-winning capabilities in there. So I and this directorate are absolutely dedicated to the scalability of these war-winning capabilities. And scalability is absolutely the key. And the resources that are required to do this are in the pipeline. And I feel, having sat on, I'll call it the opposite side of the fence that I am today, right? As a development PEO, enterprise information technology and networks and services have not always been readily available, right? And it's very hard for our material leaders, our senior material leaders, our PEOs to put stock in an infrastructure that may not be there or may not be as consistent as they need it to be in order to deliver their capability. I believe the Air Force has made that turn. To me, the OIs are a significant step forward in understanding what the Secretary wants to achieve in our preparation for China as a pacing threat, and that upgrading and modernizing our information technology is foremost on his mind, and that there are a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders that are spending their full time on pushing this capability forward to give you the best experience that you possibly can. So with that, again, I appreciate the time, being able to talk to you here. Would love to spend the rest of our time together answering a few questions for you, if anybody has that. We don't have the 100% full interaction between me being virtual and you, the audience, but you know what? I'm hopeful that we're going to get there very soon, and I'm hopeful that you are going to be able to count on your information technology and your infrastructure to do the job that you need it to do without you having to think about it too much. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate the time. Would love to answer some questions.
Hi, General. Wade Rupert, Dayton-Wright FCA. Just a question on IT modernization and resourcing in particular. You know, you've got a huge job. I don't know how you sleep at night. And you've got 90 Air National Guard wings with, 250 GSUs out there. How confident are you that that MAGCOM, in addition to all the other responsibilities you have on the active side of the house, to include the Air Force Reserve guys, how confident are you that you can do this at scale and in a time fashion to upgrade this infrastructure to meet the threat?
So I'll give you the how confident am I from a couple of different perspectives, because I think it's not a simple answer, because that's a very large question. How confident am I that the technology is available to achieve the vision that's on the roadmap? I'm incredibly confident. In fact, throughout my entire career, I have never been involved with a business enterprise that where I have not had questions, or I had not been pushing the boundaries of technology in order to get the solutions that were required. I think the technology that the Air Force needs is readily available. I think that technology and the industry that the Air Force needs is as robust as I have ever seen any industry. I'm not dealing with a lack of suppliers or a lack of people in any of the niches that are described on the roadmap. So from that aspect, I'm very confident. What we need to do, and by we, I mean the 8 families of the Air Force and Space Force IT enterprise, what we need to do is make this affordable for our taxpayer and affordable for our Air Force. And what we're working on right now is absolutely driving down those costs by consolidation, where I see it doesn't necessarily come as a savings to an individual program, but when I add up all of those individual programs, that consolidation is absolutely a savings to the Air Force, which in turn would result in more capability back into the platforms. They can utilize those funds for additional capabilities and enhancements. So that's the future that we're driving for, and that I think is entirely going to depend on resourcing and whether we can make that affordable. But I think the need has absolutely been recognized, as is evidenced by the funds that are in our budget today, what we see in the president's budget coming up, and what our Congress will enact. That will determine the level and how fast that we're able to get after a lot of these things. We are not lacking for direction or vision, so I'm confident there. It's not like we're wondering what funding we're going to get and then trying to decide what we're going to do. There is a plan laid out, and depending on the resources we have, that will be we'll be able to determine what pieces we'll be able to get after in what amount of time. We're working on short timelines, right? So I'm not talking about any of this happening. You'll finally be able to see it in a decade, all right? I'm talking about within less than a handful of years, major leaps forward, especially on our base infrastructure modernization, right? we're planning on getting after every single base, but we're going to do that in a way that gives us the most value added for the ones that we accomplish first, rather the ones that we accomplish later on the line. So utilizing this entire enterprise and utilizing the funding that comes in the entire enterprise, not just the program elements that I have under my control that are funded, that the programs of record exist, but that exist everywhere in the Air Force and the Space Force, in our COCOMs, in our MATCHCOMs, in our functionals, pulling that all together and having that vision and getting the most leverage that we can, that is still the effort that we're putting a lot of time and energy into, and I see a lot of progress being made there. Hope that answered the question. So I am confident on the technology. We still have work to do to show the affordability that will then give the Air Force confidence to put the resources towards it in a manner that we best decide how much time we want certain aspects of this roadmap to take.
General Genatempo, my name is Brad Glasgow. I'm with Salesforce. Really excited to see where Cloud One Platform One has been able to address some of the technology needs. As we talk about digital transformation and the pace of change, we see that velocity is necessary to make sure we maintain our superiority in this space. So as I look across the portfolio, there's multiple phenomenal technologies that you leverage today, specifically on the infrastructure as a service side of the house. Is Cloud One preparing to open their aperture to assess and consider partnerships with software as a service companies that can provide high velocity, low code, no code, composable application development for the warfighter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Cloud One for us is in its first iteration, right? We started, I think, back around 2017, and we started off with a model that best fit our needs and our resources at the time. The team is undergoing, putting together and pulling together a strategy for our Cloud One Next. Not a very inspiring label for our next effort, but we're not going to lose the Cloud One moniker, right? So our next iteration of Cloud One, we are very much looking at different business models to further expand exactly along the lines that you were talking about. So what I do is I'd encourage you to get in touch with us and I can put you in touch with the Cloud One Next team and would love to get feedback from you on the aspects that you just mentioned. But I know from the presentations that they've been giving me that we are thinking along those lines.
Any additional questions?
All right, one more brave person. I think we got time for one more. All righty. Well then, again, I appreciate the time today that you've allowed me to join you virtually. I hope you can see just from this small example the impact that information technology can have just for one individual on an organization, and if we keep expanding that and scaling that for the rest of the Air Force, my hope is that the productivity that we will see, the quality of life for our people will achieve a much better balance in the much faster pace that we always seem to be running at. So that is what this directorate is dedicated towards with our industry partners. And again, at AFA, I had over 20 industry engagements, and I go to about 7 or 8 different AFA and slightly smaller than AFA sized conferences a year. And I am never without enough time. I never have enough time to meet everybody that I would like to meet that has something to offer. So I encourage you, I have an open door. I will never say no. If you'd like to have a meeting, either virtually or if you happen to be up in the Hanscom area, would love to stop in and talk with you and give you a good evaluation and a good assessment as to what you have and what you might be able to help us with, and to give you that feedback to help you along to help us. So again, thanks very much, everybody, for this time. And I do hope that the next time, if I'm fortunate enough to be invited back, I would love to do that in person. And the main reason why I wasn't able to be there in person is because your keynote speaker this morning, General Richardson, is actually visiting us up here tomorrow. So I was not able to work out my logistics to be there with you today, as well as to be here with him tomorrow. But IT saved me from a lot of logistical hurdles, as well as enabled me to participate in this forum with you today. So thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate that and hope to see you soon.
All right. And I do have a copy of the Wright Brothers book that I'm going to mail up to him at Hanscom as a speaker gift and thank you. So we're going to be a little bit flexible here and swap out a couple of things. We're going to actually roll right into our next panel. And so we'll have this panel go till about 3:25 this afternoon. And this is the Empowering the Warfighter panel. And then the original networking break that we had scheduled, we're just gonna flip that around with the panel. And so we'll have a networking break from about 3:25 to 3:50 instead this afternoon. So you guys are gonna have a good amount of time to chat with the folks here. And so this is the next panel. I actually get to do the introduction, a quick introduction for this one, and bring up our moderator. So it's Empowering the Warfighter, Unleashing the Power of Legacy Modernization. And we have a lovely panel up here who are going to be taking their seats. Mr. Maurice Rollins, Mr. James Harbison, Mr. Frank Burgos, and Mr. Nick Newcomb. And I know our moderator, actually, Mr. Robert Shore, IT Program Manager for Definitive Logic, a Mantech company, who is one of our Dayton-Wright chapter of AFCEA Diamond annual sponsors. So we do appreciate you all for that. He's going to be the moderator for us. So I will welcome you up here to get us started and introduce your group. Thank you.
Sure. Are we live?
Welcome, everyone, to our panel on Empowering the Warfighter, Unleashing the Power of Legacy Modernization. We are very happy to be here today. I am Rob Schnorr, and I work for Definitive Logic, a Mantech company. As I am a program manager, I support the Integrated Logistics System Supply, or better known as ILSS contract. Part of that contract is we are modernizing the stock control system, or otherwise known as SCS. It is based out of Wright-Patterson here in Dayton. So we'll use that project as our case example for talking about IT modernization in the Air Force space. Next, I will introduce the panel. Maurice Rollins, he is U.S. Air Force ILSS Capability Manager out of the Gunner Annex in Montgomery, Alabama. To his right, we have James Harbison. He is also with the United States Air Force ILSS team. He's the lead engineer. He's also out of Montgomery, Alabama. To James's right, we have Frank Burgos. He is our SCS Transformation Integration Architect. He also works for Mantech, and he's based out of the Tampa Bay area. He's got a wide array of experience supporting commercial and government IT modernization projects. Even knows a little bit COBOL, too. And then on the far end, we have Nick Newcomb, who is the president of TSRI. He's based out of Seattle, Washington, so he came a great way to be here today. So thank you, Nick, for being here. His company is our vendor that is doing the code transformation. TSRI is a leader in modernizing legacy applications and code bases. We would love to address any questions you have, so please save those for the end for the Q&A. So a little background before we get into our questions. So the SCS Legacy Modernization Project formally began back in May 2021. There was a contract changeover a little bit in March, And then in September, we restarted this effort when the contract transitioned to Definitive Logic. As I said before, we're utilizing the TSRI Janus Studio to translate legacy COBOL to modern Java. I said COBOL. I'm sure a lot of people are still supporting COBOL as well. Legacy CIDEAL, the user interface code base, to modern JavaScript React. And then finally, the legacy JCL to Python. The architecture will move from the mainframe and mid-tier architecture to the AWS GovCloud, Cloud One. And we are transferring over 400 production interfaces with 55 partners. So that's going to be a big lift for sure. And then finally, we're only 1 year into the project. We'll summarize kind of where we've been for the last year and then looking forward. And then it should be another 2 to 3 years to fully modernize the stock control system. Our panel today will cover what are IT legacy modernizations, what are the different approaches or types of modernizing your IT systems, what IT business and program issues can be addressed with modernizing your IT systems, what are some of the technical considerations when modernizing your IT systems, what are some of the project management, procurement, budgetary best practices when managing these types of complex projects. And then finally, if you're interested in doing a type of project like this, what are your initial first steps? All right, so we'll get started with the question. Frank, you'll be the first person I ask. What are IT legacy modernization initiatives like code transformations and architecture transformations? Why are they important to mission critical Air Force systems like SCS?
Well, primary reason for doing this stuff is always comes down to cost. You know, supporting a legacy mainframe application on-prem, IBM is in the business to make money, so they will make money. But it's an expensive proposition, right? So what we want to do is get off that mainframe on-prem system and migrate to the cloud in order to take advantage of the ROIs and the cost savings that applies. Well, saying that there's an ROI or a cost savings, you have to quantify that. So what I would do is come up with a couple of quantifications, I guess as it were, of why it's cheaper to go to the cloud for the most part, right? Such factors as the cost of hardware in cloud, infrastructure in the cloud, it's a lot cheaper, you know. The elastic ability of cloud computing where you use what you need, but you don't use what you don't need. It's so pay by the drink paradigm, so it's a very effective use of hardware and software utilizations, right? More importantly, though, I'm talking about hardware, but to me, the most important issue is people, okay? In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you could shake the proverbial COBOL tree and lots of developers would fall out, okay? Well, guess what? That tree is drying up, okay? Not only for COBOL, in a legacy environment specific to IBM, there's a language called assembler. You know, it's a machine-level language known as ALC, Assembler Language Coding, BAL, Basic Assembler Language. That's even more difficult. And those people are even less, there's even less of them. So the bottom line is we have to replace those resources. Well, how do you replace them? Well, you convert your COBOL and your JCL in the IBM world to things like Java and Python, right? Interesting point about the assembler language program. There's a side issue about it from a modernization perspective. I would say about 80% of the airlines, domestic and international, have a system written by IBM in the early 60s, written exclusively in the assembler programming language. And guess what? That's 1960 to now plus 20. That's 60 years of legacy applications that are still being used. When you check in the airport, you're checking in into a system that's 60 plus years old. Think about that, and how that's going to impact the modernization. And I'm going to throw out a quick question out to the audience. It's an acronym question, and if you get it right, Mr. Snore will take you out for dinner tonight. No, I'm just joking. So, there's an acronym, COBOL. It's an acronym that stands for what? And those people that are doing chat GPT, no, that's not so fast. What does COBOL stand for? What's the acronym? Amazing. Oh my God. Nobody knows? Go ahead, go right ahead, I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
Common business opera.
Business.
It's really common. Yeah, that's close enough.
What was the answer, Frank?
Common-oriented business language.
All right.
Close enough. Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right, so yeah, thank you, Frank. So yeah, I mean, why do people go forward with projects like this? It's to save cost. It's to make sure you have the right people supporting your applications, and this training, having to invest so much money to get people trained up in these legacy languages that they're no longer teaching in school, or even probably having online training about. So that's some of the reasons why it's really important, why you should consider a project like this. And so next we'll talk about capabilities and readiness, and making sure the Air Force is prepared with that by making sure they're modernizing the SES system. So Nick, do you want to talk about how the modernization of SES is preparing Air Force for readiness against their adversaries and enhancing their capabilities?
Absolutely. Actually, a couple of things that Frank was speaking to, and the Major General previously was referring to, in terms of coming back to people and what that means in terms of systems and what's going on in the industry generally today, is it's not just an Air Force problem. Today the world runs on, as we know, an infrastructure called software, and to be able to protect it, you kind of need to understand it, or at least gives you a better chance of being able to protect it when you can understand it. And then the other side of that is actually being able to advance that software so it's doing things better, more efficiently, achieving a particular purpose. And in a way that kind of takes us back to the start of how to plan for a project of this kind, is you centralize on a couple of key questions. One is, what's the purpose here? And what does that body of applications need to solve? Is it something that can be retired and replaced in some form or fashion, or are you talking about military business logic that is hyper precisely designed to achieve very, very specific things that are important to the well-being and the effectiveness of ultimately the user, the warfighter? And one of the things that sometimes goes under the rug when it comes back to the people question is, after 60 years of developing multi-million line systems, you start, especially in this day and age when people can't even necessarily, you can't train people or enough people to understand those types of languages, you need to start to develop a body of individuals who are capable of understanding what the system did, how it did it, why it did it. And if those are locked in stuff like the equivalent of ancient Aramaic, it's very, very hard to get people to plug into that system and then improve it. So these days, when we're looking at where we have to head, the key things we're asking is, what at the end of the line does this system need to achieve? Does it need to be more scalable? Does it need to be secure? How can we make sure that we've got function first in place? And that's the fundamental unlock. After which, you need to make sure that people understand what it means to inherit that system and take it a step further.
Thanks, Nick. My next question will be for you, James. So prior to the SES modernization, ILSS led the successful modernization of the Standard Base Supply System, SBSS. What are some of the technical lessons learned from the SBS modernization that you applied to planning for the SES project we're working on now?
Well, when we moved off the SBSS in 2017, the big three of program management, cost, schedule, and performance, we were green on all of them. Below cost, ahead of schedule, better performance. And being an engineer, we were asked, how'd you get all three? Most programs just simply don't get them all. So we analyzed it, and we put together some reasons, and there's more than a couple, and so I'll just read them off to you. It's broken out in a number of different categories. The first one is high-level vision. The first under high-level vision was, we had a roadmap to our desired end state. We weren't just doing something that was just 2 years. We were making sure we had an idea where we want to be 5 or 10 years out. This played into it, but you have to have an idea where you're going. We had an enterprise vision of a scalable infrastructure. What we were picking wasn't, which is basically mid-tier servers. We wanted to make sure that our design, we could just keep adding and adding and adding, because developers do their best, but sometimes you just need to add stuff. But we also had a vision of a cheaper infrastructure. I mean, we wanted commodity hardware. I mean, in the past, hardware was very expensive. Nowadays, your average mid-tier is as strong as your mainframe in the past. And it's very cheap, $10,000, $20,000 a server, lots of, 16, 20, 32 CPUs. We wanted that kind of stuff so that when you add and add, it's not going to break the bank. And also, we wanted to take advantage of open source software. In ILSS, other than our Oracle license, which we get off the Air Force One, we have nearly a zero cost software stack. So we really wanted to drive that cost down. And we also wanted to control the baseline and our intellectual property. So many systems, when they modernize, they give away everything, which is okay from the short run, but in the future, when someone finally realizes they've got you by the neck, they're going to jack the prices up. And then you're not going to be able to afford your solution, and you're not even going to own your solution anymore. We keep our code under ILSS, in ILSS. The next big category was staffing and experience. Biggest thing, you got to have an experienced developer and an integrator. I mean, this was, there's 4 categories of software releases, patches, minor releases, majors, and baselines. This is a baseline. I mean, we're not only going to change your hardware, but we're going to change your primary programming language also. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than this, folks. I mean, so you have to have someone's experience. If they're a small little vendor, too small, this is not the tasking for them, because you really need someone who has some experience and depth. You have to have an experienced SPO. I mean, we had folks in our SPO who were experienced subject matter experts, experienced PMs, experienced cost folks, experienced engineers. So you have to have a good SPO. Also, believe it or not, you have to have experience with the software engineering process. In the past, I've heard of efforts where they not only change their design, but they're going to use a new software process to do it. Folks, don't change too many things at once. Stay with the one that you have experience with. If you change too many things at once, that just adds to risk. For us, the development environment should match the test environment, and the test environment should match the production environment as much as possible. Believe it or not, I've worked with systems that they develop Windows and field on Unix. Come on, folks. I mean, you wonder why you experience problems in production when you don't have things matching. Our philosophy is very simple. Try to keep them as matching as much as practical. We had a lot of experience with our hardware and software stacks. I mean, when we modernized, this was not the first time in this case, Linux and Oracle, we were not the first time we did this. I mean, we had years of experience. So, I mean, moving another part, in this case, Unisys mainframe, to Linux and Oracle was not a big stretch. We weren't having to teach our developer or our functionals anything. We were good, had a lot of experience in large-scale performance testing. I mean, you're doing a baseline release. You're going to have to test everything, and then you're going to have to performance test everything, which is quite different than functional testing. And you're going to have to do it a lot and often, because best developers can't get everything out. You got a performance test to make sure you truly can crank those response times down. We had a thorough understanding of our infrastructure costs, our software licensing, and our overall business case. I mean, management always gets beat up on the ROI. It's amazing how many big systems really don't have an ROI. They really don't know. They're trying to solve a problem. They don't even know how much money they're going to save, if they're going to save anything. We had a lot of experience with our infrastructure providers. In the case when we moved off of SPSS, it was just DISA at that point. We didn't have the requirement for the cloud yet. We had a lot of experience with standing up servers in DISA. Like we had done it 5 times in the past. This was just another one we had to do. A lot of folks, their hardware had been in place forever. They really hadn't had any experience with actually standing up anything. We had a lot of experience. Another big category was preparing ahead of time. If you have the luxury, try and isolate your GUIs ahead of time. ILSS did have that luxury. We actually modernize our GUIs to web GUIs years ahead of time. For stock control effort, we're not going to have years ahead of time, so we're going to have to do that at the same time. But if you can, you isolate the GUIs, because that really affects your testing. And also, if there's one more thing that you don't have to consider, your risk will go down. Also, when it comes to your security or security layer or your security, we were already on what security layer we were going to use when we moved off SPSS. We had already been using it. In this case, it was Tivoli Access Manager. We had that done years ahead of time. So it was not a new security paradigm when we moved off this system. One last thing we had to consider. Probably the biggest thing that was applicable to ILSS and stock control, you have to isolate your back-end interfaces. You know, when you move your system, you change your IPs, and which means there's firewalls involved. You can't be doing that during the production move, because as soon as you move that first server, if you haven't done that prep work, you're broke. Your interface partners can't find you, and they can't get your data files to and from. You're broke. Your system's dead, and our systems don't allow us to be dead. So you need to isolate those ahead of time. We used a man-in-the-middle concept, not a terribly difficult thing to understand, where we put a set of servers where no longer did you talk to the mainframe directly, you talked to the middleman, and which was what we controlled the middleman servers. And when we got there and moved our first mainframe, we just internally threw a switch. The interface partners had no clue that we were moving off the mainframe. They never talked to the mainframe anymore. So you really need to do that. That's a big issue with stock control. Like he said, they have 57 independent interface partners with like 400 ICDs. We have to do that ahead of time. You can't do it during the production move. And when it comes to the actual effort execution, you got to control the scope of the conversion. I mean, you can't do BPR, business process reengineering. I mean, I know management likes to, when you're changing stuff, can't you change a little more? Can you change the functionality? Well, that just destroys your testing. Because our testing was as is what to be. As soon as you start adding new stuff, well, as is don't match to be, you can't test. And we have a lot of auto tests. Well, a huge amount of auto tests, thousands of auto tests. You just break that, and then you don't get a warm fuzzy. Does your system even work, like it's supposed to be? So no BPR. You just have to ride that. And also no enterprise data consolidation. We had a lot of individual Air Force supply bases. They all had their own individual schemas. The idea, well, can't you combine them all into one big schema? While technically possible, don't do it during your migration. That's something to be done post-migration, but don't do it during the migration. Because once you muck with the database, it affects the code, it affects everything. And finally, no single big bang release. I mean, if you can, have a staggered implementation. We had different Air Force bases. We could do a couple to begin with, make sure it works. And if you need to tune or fix problems, we could do that. Then you do a couple more, and then you do a couple more, then you do a lot more, and then you do a whole bunch more, and you finish the effort. Have a staggered implementation. It worked beautifully. I mean, we finished way ahead of schedule, but we had enough time in the schedule that if our developer needed to do some tuning, they could, and it wouldn't, because, the best of developers can't anticipate everything. So really, we had a lot of different lessons learned, and we've tried to apply as many as possible to the new effort.
Thanks, Professor James. That was thorough, as usual. Usually in our meetings, he just blows up our chat with lots of good nuggets like that. So thank you, James. Does anyone want to kind of add on to what James went there, or any other previous topic that we covered from before?
Definitely, actually. There are a couple things that I think are really critical to point out that James was speaking to in terms of preparation. And one of the main ones is even coming to the conclusion that now is the time to modernize the system and how to modernize it. And actually, what I'd like to hear a little bit more from anybody on the panel, quite frankly, is what were the various decision factors that caused you to go down the path of essentially a refactoring of the code that took you into the rest of the modernization? Because there's the hardware, there's the testing, there's all of that. But a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, where do I even start? And you spoke to experience, who has potentially done this before. And there's lots of folks out there who can approach modernizations, but one of the biggest factors in terms of the affordability is going to be set at the very, very beginning. Is what strategy are you pursuing, and what are the risks that you are essentially creating? Because there will be risk. It's not a bad word. What are the risks that you're creating that need to be thought through in advance so that you can keep your project on a successful trajectory and inside a budget? And those are decisions that are basically land on very, very early on. So I'd love to hear how you guys approached piecing that together.
Well, for us, it's real simple. You're spending $27 million a year on Unisys hardware for infrastructure. We don't want to spend $27 million a year anymore. So we did a business case, and we said, you know, if we move to mid-tier servers are cheap, dirt cheap, you know, and we ain't talking a few. We had about, you know, over 50 for the production environment. But I mean, even counting production, test, and dev, the whole shebang was only about, I don't know, $4.5 million bucks. So if you're willing to do this effort, you can pocket $22 million a year just out of our effort. That was the driving thing. Yep, we're willing to do that because it don't take many years to recoup any you know, money that you're going to spend on the effort or the contract at $22 million a year. So that was the big stomper there. We did a business case. I mean, the options were, you know, status quo, like don't do nothing. I think Unisys had some mid-tier servers that had a proprietary link back to the mainframe, but they were not $20,000 a year servers. I think they were like $150,000, $180,000 a year servers. We really didn't like that because we didn't want to have a unique mid-tier server. We want something that was pretty ubiquitous. You know, if you used Dell HP one year for your server, you could use a different one next year. You know, they're all, you know, Intel-based servers. I think the other one was let's componentize the infrastructure at the same time, make components out of everything. And the other one was don't get complicated, just lift and shift and drop down. I mean, about the only thing we did different was change the primary coding language. We chose, the latter one to become the one they chose because it had less risk. I mean, we did not try to get real fancy. You know, the code in SPSS was an ugly pig. Now it's a modernized ugly pig, you know, but it's now, you know, a modernized ugly pig. You can do a lot more things. We have done post efforts afterwards to do some cleaning up, but managing risk, that's what it was, but it really was driven by saving $22 million a year. That's what drove everything.
All right, thanks, James. Thanks, Nick. So we'll change gears a bit here. We've talked quite a bit about the technology and maybe the approaches or the types of modernizations. We'll now kind of get in the nitty-gritty of actually managing a complex project like this. So Maurice, very well dressed, great socks, by the way. From a project management perspective, what are some things that you've done so far to make sure the SES project is a success? Specifically, let's talk about like resourcing, testing, and then managing scope.
Thank you, Rob. So the main thing is make sure you got a James Harbison on your team. So you can see you got a highly technical lead engineer, but from a programmatic standpoint, we look at this effort, so it's highly technical. So we're talking 11 to 14 million lines of code. We're looking at the interfaces. So they talked about 56 interfaces, 400 touch points. But when I walked in the room earlier, Mr. Sick, he came up and he says, hey, how's the code modernization going? I said, good. Well, good is not good enough. He says, are you on schedule? So from a program perspective, that's kind of what we're great about, cost, schedule, performance, and we always leave out the big R, which is risk. So when we look at this perspective on a schedule, you can give a timeline on where you are as far as your milestones, but the success is once you go into production, you know, how did that execute? But prior to that point, when you look at it, contracts. So we looked at best practices. How do you manage this to where you can scale up, scale down? How can you plus up? So we worked in an agile environment. Agile is the buzzword now. A lot of people say they're agile, but they're really not agile. But for us, we ensured that we were agile, so we're able to plus up our system admin's costs. You start out with what you call a ROM. So it's just a rough order of magnitude. It's just an estimate on how much this effort is going to cost. Once you lift the hood up, you really don't know what other costs that you may incur. So when you have a contract that's scalable, that's agile, you're able to plus up, you're able to add costs. And then when you look at risk, that's a word that it's taking a negative tone instead of a preventive. For us, risk is a daily basis. It's the life of a program manager, but it's the life of this stock control modernization. How can we manage a future event that's going to happen? It can be positive or negative. How can we manage that early so we can be able to prepare properly? So risk has been great. And another thing is collaboration. I would say ensure that you have a good, sound developer PM. I think we have that. And make sure you have a good, sound government PM. Now, the jury's still out on the government side, but I think those are key in collaboration and making sure your development, your sustainment, your test team, and your SPO are all working syncopally because the effort is so large. I mean, you can't even emphasize how large it is. You got 2 developer contractors, you got 2 SME, you got 2 SPOs involved. It's just a lot of hands that are involved. But if you manage according to your schedule, make sure we have daily meetings, 8:30 every morning, Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday. So it's good collaboration, but also making sure you're agile, that you can pivot, you can flex, at the speed of need.
All right, thanks, Maurice. My next question will be for you, Nick. So Definitive Logic is the integrator for the stock control system modernization project. We're using TSRI as our code transformation vendor, and you guys have a really robust software. So can you speak about your software and then also maybe some of the successes you've had recently, and specifically the federal and DoD space?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so as much as I'd like to say that, TSRI is a solution for all forms of modernization, that's simply not the case. Where we are particularly useful and specifically useful to SCS is in scenarios where that business logic that's running the systems is critical and needs to be preserved. So the role that we're primarily playing, and the way I like to help people understand where we generally sit, is if you kind of think of a modernization journey like a football field, we're in one end zone, and we like to take that football and just throw it as far down that field as we possibly can, and then give it to the integrator, who ideally has this code that has not just been turned into new code, but has already been modified in ways that are useful to that end purpose. So getting back to what we specifically can do and what the Janus modernization platform is capable of, is it's not just one language to some new language. It's actually a universal modeling capability that can take all kinds of languages and put it into a centralized model that can then be manipulated and refactored and improved upon, and then that emits kind of modernized code in some form or fashion. So a good example is take something like monolithic COBOL, get it into a universal model, and then transform it into a multi-tiered architecture that can be deployed into one of various types of clouds. And what we've been doing for about 25 years now is improving the flexibility and sophistication, that it's not just a line that gets read and then gets turned into some other line of code. It is the inherent meaning of a multi-million line software application that is then understood so that it can be changed in useful ways. So that's kind of where we sit in terms of the overall process. Everything that we are trying to figure out early on when we're planning for a project is understanding, hey, what needs to happen on the back end of this? Do we need to improve our cybersecurity refactoring considerations? What does the performance need to be? Where are we going to change elements of the way that we're transforming that reflect the requirement of not just the integrator and the organization, but the needs of the warfighter, and figure out what considerations there go into the way that we are designing and changing what we do when we have understood the meaning of the code and we're emitting it. So That's where we play a role, after which there's all of the very complex integration to the hardware and then moving through the testing. Ideally, we're able to help there as well in terms of applying our forms of tests. So we have test frameworks that are designed to help the modernization succeed through being able to leverage what the function is of the original system. And ideally, when we're going for a business logic modernization, there should be no disruption. This is not always the case. So when we transform code, we do it, we target 100% automated transformation. It sounds like, oh, okay, great, now you get to hit a button. What it means is that you don't have to stop evolving the existing system while we're understanding how to modernize it. So that system can continuously be improved, and we're improving understanding where it's headed, and we're iteratively redeploying essentially that code over time. And that means there's no code freezing. So your system's not going to go down. It's going to target functionality, and as we are learning with the integrator what the requirements are of the project, we're able to improve on that from the front end and at any time redeploy the code in a modernized form that is serving the needs of the end digital ecosystem is basically what we call it. Am I missing anything?
No, that was great, Nick. Thank you.
All right, great.
All right. Frank, my next question is for you. So as Definitive Logic, the integrator, we're 1 year in with the stock control modernization. Is there any integration obstacles we've had to overcome that you really want to share here and kind of elaborate on?
Yeah, what's really interesting from an obstacle perspective, our mandate early on was modernize this system, but keep it the same. Think about that, right? Modernize it, but don't change it. Okay? We have a term that's used like for like, right? So the philosophy we have is what's called the like for life paradigm. It's almost like a Robert Ludlum novel, but the bottom line is we will modify the system, modernize it. We'll take COBOL, convert it to Java. We'll take JCL, Java Control Language, convert it into Python. We'll take these legacy screen presentations and convert it to React screens, and so on and so forth. A 3270 screen in the old system will look like a 3270 screen in the new system, but that's just our mandate. We want to improve it to the extent that the underlying technology and supportability and sustainability with Java versus COBOL is there. But the bottom line is we cannot change the system. And I think a point was raised about scope creep. Well, with this paradigm, there's just no way we can kind of tweak some little things to make it a little bit better, but there's not going to be major changes in the functionality. The behavior of the system will be exactly the same as it was from the legacy, as it is in the modernized system. Now, you want to enhance it, but again, to James's point, those type of things should be post-implementation. Do I want to make the screen more user-friendly? Enhance it to really look like a real screen presentation versus a 3270 emulation. Well, you don't want to do that as part of the modernization. You want to wait till everything is in place, everything is solid, and then you start enhancing it after the fact. You don't want to be messing with it. James also made the point about these integration points. SES, in essence, is a system that takes data, gives it to other systems, and ingests data from other systems as well. So it's basically passing data back and forth. Right? A lot of business knowledge logic in there as well. The interfacing is the key. To me, it's the biggest issue we have in modernizing this system. Okay? James made the point about the man in the middle. Well, we developed a framework that uses an adapter pattern. And the best analogy I can give you, if you have an appliance that you plug into the wall in the US, well, if you go to Europe, that plug's not going to work. You're going to need an adapter. You plug it into the adapter, and then you take that adapter and plug it into the socket in whatever country you are in, for example, in Europe. Well, we're using that philosophy. And to James's point, we will get all those integrations done while the application, the legacy application, is still in DISA. Okay? So we will basically implement the adapter pattern through the existing legacy system. So when we start modernizing components of the legacy system and move it in piecemeal, we can move it from DISA over to the cloud. And to James's point, the end user or the end integration partner won't even know the difference. I mean, that's huge. That's the biggest effort we have right now. We're projecting anywhere from 2 years, give or take, to get that done, because there's so many of them. There's 400 separate integrations from in and out of SCS, plus SCS to SCS as well. That's right now the biggest hurdle we are dealing with from an integration perspective. You know? But we will get it done, and ILSS has proven that it's a viable option. You know? Anybody has any questions about that particular technology we're using, we can talk after our forum.
You want to add something on that, James?
When you do the man in the middle, it's all grunt work. I mean, you have to contact interface partners.
Yep.
You got to, change ports and protocol lists. You got to open up firewalls. You got to recontact your interface partner. It's just grunt work. It's not very fun and it ain't very fast.
It's painful.
You just got to, but you got to do it ahead of time because, like I said, if you don't, go ahead and move that first system and lose your interface connectivity. You'll get to talk to a 3-star. I mean, probably not in a pleasant way, but so you just got to do that ahead of time.
Yeah, it's interesting about the whole issue about punching holes in firewalls. I've done that in the commercial environment for years, and it was always a painful process, and it's never easy, right? You do something in, you got to test it, and then you push something out, and your recipient says, "I'm not getting any data," or now you got to start doing tracing through the network and stuff like that. When I got into the Air Force and this Air Force project, I said, well, maybe punching holes in the firewall will be a lot easier. No, it's just as hard, and it's just as tedious. It's grunt work.
Yeah. And if you move to the cloud, Cyber Command just doesn't like, opening up things in firewalls. No. That's the reason we have to leave the man in the middle in DISA. It's actually in DISA. Right. They will not, even though we're a big system, that don't mean squat to them. We tried, didn't mean anything to them. So you really got to solve that, not only for the existing, DISA to DISA, but you need to solve the DISA to cloud solution too, because Cyber Command, they just won't listen to you. They won't punch a hole in their firewall.
You want to add something, Maurice?
I'll just add that, there's a lot of information been shared today, but before you go out on your own and venture out, feel free to contact us. I'm the LSPM. James Harbison, our lead engineer. We got TSRI here. We got AST. We're in this virtual world, so we're open to a Zoom call. We're open to a Teams call to kind of walk you through the preparation, the project timeline of what we've gone through, and certainly the lessons learned within this year. But also, we'll be willing to share with you the lessons learned through ILSS when we self-migrated in 2017. So feel free to reach out. We'll be around this evening. But we're open to share all of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that'll save you some time, and more importantly, it'll save you a lot of money.
Thanks, Maurice. I think it's a perfect segue. You got one last thing, James, before we open up for questions?
We'll share more than lessons learned. We'll talk your ear off. And I have all the documents, the business cases, all the design patterns, the design documents. I mean, ad nauseum, I got every document we ever had. So if you just don't want to create from scratch, call Maurice or me, and we'll hook you up. I mean, at least we'll show you what we did. Now, obviously, you got to modify it for your own system, but you do not have to start from scratch.
And can I just one last
I've got to jump on.
Okay, all right. Everyone's get their last word, and Nick, go ahead, and then Frank.
The last word on this one is, please do talk to these gentlemen if you're trying to figure out where you want to head with the modernization. One of the most important things to seeing a successful modernization occur, and TSRI has seen a lot of those, but one of the best factors is people on the organization side and the user side who have seen them done successfully, and they know what to expect because they're going to be working best with the integrator and with whatever transformation vendor you might be working with, if you're doing a business logic transformation, to really make sure you've got all the bases covered. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of taking advantage of these two gentlemen's time if you have the chance to do so.
All right. Frank, last word?
Last thing. I was hired by Patrick right here because of my expertise in IBM MQ, right? I have a substantial back-end legacy mainframe application. Although I haven't written a COBOL program in over 25 years, but it's amazing how fast it came back to me. It's critical that you can have a ton of really good Java programmers. If they don't understand, at least at a high level, COBOL and JCL, you're going to need somebody to translate, because I keep on telling my developers, look at the COBOL code and compare it to the Java code. That'll give you a better understanding. You know? So it's really critical to have the legacy expertise as well as the new technology expertise, because you go new technology only, you're missing half, basically half of the equation. You know?
All right. Do we have any questions?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Lots. This might be better for drinks. Appreciate the education here. Got a lot of questions, and I guess the first question I have is, as you think about digital transformation and modernization of a system, especially something like a COBOL system, but yet at the same time you're saddled with the requirement of don't change anything, that's pretty antithetical to transformation. So as we look at that, for the broader scope of the Air Force, as we continue down this path at looking at our legacy infrastructure, how do we begin to draw the wedge between those that are resistant to change? Because again, that's antithetical to the objective that we're here to achieve as technologists. How do you see changing that mantra moving forward? Because we don't have the time, nor do we have the budget for these longer, we need to transform it, but don't change it. So maybe that's more of a theological, religious, tribal question to ask, but I'm really curious, because how did you respond when you got that requirement?
I would say you can pay me now or you can pay me later, right? Come back 5 years from now when your entire COBOL development staff is retiring en masse. What are you going to do, okay? Like I said before, you can't shake that COBOL tree because there ain't nothing falling out of it anymore, right? People that are going to college are not taking courses in COBOL, right? They take courses in Java, Python, and whatever the AI, whatever the du jour is for that year. They're retiring. And I hate to say this, but they're also dying, okay? So that's a resource that's not replenishable. You know, you can wait for 5 years and your situation will be even more dire than it is now. So it's just common sense. Pay me now, pay me later. You pay me later, it's going to cost you more. Okay?
James, you want to add to it?
I guess I take a more pragmatic approach. People want to change the functionality and use all the new technologies and everything, but you can't use the new technologies until you got to change the base. And changing the base is doable. It's the 80% that enables you to do the gee whiz 20% that looks really cool, okay? Take the 80% of the dollar and put it in your pocket first, and then let them worry about that, if they ever get to that. I mean, sometimes people think that's more important, but when you encapsulate stuff and you move it all onto the same platform, and your CPUs are so powerful that you can waste all the million CPU cycles, maybe people in the future don't care if they're wasting a million CPU cycles, because you moved it onto such a fast platform that you can just waste all you want. I would say do that first, versus worrying about the 20%. Let's rewrite the system right now first, folks. You'll spend 20 years or 50 years trying to get that 20% when you could do the 80% of the effort, up front. Engineers would rather do the big one that gets the most bang for the buck first, and then do the other stuff afterwards, if you ever do it.
Maurice, you want to add on to that?
Tag on to that. So, Mr. Burst, our newly PEO, talked about the other week in his all call. It's about delivering capabilities to the warfighter. And this is, on an old system, it's just impossible because we've got new competing requirements daily, new efforts we've got ICAM, you've got FIRE, you got NFRs, not to mention other compete efforts that you'll have. So operating on a legacy system is just not even, I won't say it's not even pragmatic to even think that you're going to be able to compete in a global world that is moving faster and faster every day. So if we don't agile, if we don't deliver at the speed of need, we're just being left behind. So it's almost like it's not an option. It's not an option to decide. You have to be agile, you got to flex up, you've got to deliver these requirements, and you just got to excel.
But again, you can't do everything at once. I mean, management wants to do everything at once, and I'm sorry, you just can't. Engineers will just flat tell you honestly, no, I can't do everything at once. I need to do this sequentially. You can try to parallelize it if you want and fail miserably, but some things need to be sequentially done, and then you can do parallelization. So I don't have a good answer to higher management that wants to do everything at once. It's just not possible.
Yeah, a good point about security.
From our perspective, kind of diving right into the philosophy of it, step one is that's the unlock. Is the transformation like for like function first, and then you ensure the continuing function of the system. It's not that you're doing nothing new when you do that transformation. You are figuring out, hey, how does this thing best need to land in this new digital ecosystem that's going to arrive in? Afterwards, you start to think through, okay, we've got it there. It has all of the new tools available to it in this modernized environment. How are we going to now change it to meet the evolving needs of ultimately the warfighter? And the reason that we kind of focus on this function first is it de-risks your ability to do that, and at least along this particular pathway, it doesn't disrupt your existing system. So you get a lowest possible risk way to modernize the system, get it into the infrastructure and in the software languages that you need it to be, so that now people can effectively make the changes that they would want to make to see that system improve over time. So that's really where it bridges the gap. It's not, be afraid of the innovation, but getting it there first helps the people making the decision know, hey, we got there, and now we can take it to wherever it needs to head next.
And we've done a number of post-modernization refactors with TSRI, even in ILSS. So we did the big one first, and then we come back later on when we weren't doing so many darn changes and did some ones of smaller magnitude, and the user was oblivious. They didn't know what was happening under the hoods. So you can come back. It's not like you only have one chance at this.
Now he's getting to the fun stuff.
One quick question. It's a quick.
I have a real quick question.
Okay.
So yeah, Brian White, MFGS. We represent Micro Focus, which also does a lot of the lift and shift with our visual COBOL.
Okay, cool.
I have really quick. So no COBOL developers, zero cost. Again, we're a software vendor. How do you move these systems from the mainframe, keeping the interface the same at zero cost? I understand the Oracle Enterprise license is one thing, but there's no developers?
Yeah, I think there was a misunderstanding. We never said zero cost.
Okay.
Yeah. There is a vendor cost, yeah.
But is it, well, to the cloud provider, right? But for the transform, I guess, TSRI, like, so, again, like, we do this, again, for IMDS. We've done it in different other programs, a lot of mainframes. It's kind of one of our specialties, but
Okay. Yeah, we'll happily talk to you after this, yeah. We're going to wrap it up.
Clarify, there's no zero.
Yeah, it's
I
not
can
zero
tell you that the ILSS move was about $30 million. So it wasn't instantaneous. It was about about a 4-year effort total, but it was about $30 million. So, but we were saving $22 million a year after we got converted. So it didn't take long to get the ROI to go positive.
Yep. Awesome. Well, if anyone else has any questions, we'll happily talk to you after this. So thanks again for your time. Thank you, panelists.
Okay, so now we are heading into our break. we will come back for our last panel of the day at 15:50. So you got a little bit of time here, network, visit our vendor booths, and there's some snacks in the back. So enjoy, network a little bit, and we'll be back at 15:50. Thank you.